Welcome to the Pillars of Performance, movement skills to jump higher and hit harder. This video might be one of the most important in the whole series. This is going to talk about principles. These are overarching guidelines that are your responsibility to take with you throughout all these videos. The first one is going to be awareness. Why awareness? What you're unaware of, you can't change. What you are aware of, you can change. And when you're trying to change your body or any technique, you need to become aware of what is happening. Most commonly in my experience, even professional athletes, as well as young athletes and college athletes, their perception of where their body is in space is not accurate to reality. One of the simplest and most effective things that I do is I video them, I show them where they were in space, and then I ask them questions about, is that where you thought you were? Is that where we intended to be because of the exercise? So how I coach myself, how I coach my own athletes, is just by simple video feedback. I know where I want to be in a certain exercise, or where I want a spine or an arm to be in space. And then the video shows me how accurate my perceptions were. So I want you to record yourself throughout this entire series, play it back, compare it to the videos that I'm giving you, and see, are you moving as you intend to move? The more refined you are as a driver of this vehicle, the better you're going to be able to perform. It's simple and low-hanging fruit, yet it's missed by so many. The second one is called repetition without repetition. And what that means is that how can you repeat a similar outcome or a process a different way every time? What that means for you with these exercises is that too often coaches and trainers say that this is the exact way a technique is supposed to be done, and don't ever stray from this, otherwise cows are going to explode and you're going to lose every game, or whatever crazy excuse. If you watch sports, if you watch your dog running, they accomplish the same task. They make a pass a unique way every single time. No two plays are alike. When we look at emotions, when we look at movement, when we look at skill, when we look at pretty much everything in nature and sport, variation is the norm. So with these series of movements, I'm going to lay out the groundworks for you to then play within. How can you repeat those movements a slightly different way every single time? I don't want you to repeat it like you're in an assembly line. Repeat it with a little bit of creativity. The second aspect with repetition and repetition without repetition is your sets and reps. Well, there are some scientific notions of what repetitions and sets, what numbers are best. In this kind of video, and for you to really start becoming your own coach, I want you to change the reps up and really to follow your awareness. If you're moving well, you move the reps up, add more sets. Sometimes go really slow, painfully slow. Sometimes go really fast. Use your body as your guide. If you pay attention to the signals that you feel within, your body will let you know if you're in a good position or a more dangerous position. Secondly, again, awareness. Compare yourself to the videos that I've provided for you to make sure that you're still in a safe and efficient position. The third one. No pain. Pain, for many reasons, is not something to be desired. It is a signal from your body to be listened to. Pain is a messenger that's trying to get you to change your behavior. Continuing to move with pain is somewhat foolish, and a lot of times it can have a solution. None of these exercises should be painful. If you have pain, then I suggest finding a local practitioner that can help you with that. Secondly, with that, this isn't meant to diagnose or even treat any injuries. What this whole course is about is optimizing and balancing your movement patterns. It's well known at the elite levels of better positions and better ways to train. That's all this is providing for you. It is both increasing your performance and reducing the risk or lowering the probability of injury. That doesn't mean it's going to make you invincible, but it can help balance your movement, and that injury might not show up for you. The fourth thing, some of the movements that you're going to see from me are going to look very similar to things that you've done before or seen before. The unique difference is how they are done. For instance, in one of your arm workouts, I'm giving you a push-up. Why should I be giving you a push-up? Because the majority of way people are doing push-ups these days is not in a way that's going to help you hit harder as a volleyball player. It's not going to help your shoulder be a more integrated part of your body. So I find the nuance of what you need to do and what you need to change to make a push-up an actually really effective means for you to train. It's also a great way for you to train at home with minimal equipment. 5. This is similar to repetition without repetition, but I want you to explore. Once you feel that you are proficient in a lot of these movements, it's time for you to explore and find out what's possible. A lot of times when my athletes and I explore like this, we find things that we wouldn't have found otherwise. We wouldn't have found if we were sticking to the plan, if we were sticking to the spreadsheet of what I had designed for that day. A lot of the best things that we have found for their performance have come through applying this philosophy with some simple exploration. I really hope that you take these guidelines with you. If you don't remember these, please just remember that one. If you want to change anything, you're first going to have to become aware of it. Hey, welcome to part 1 of the Movement Vitamins series. This series should be done daily, and the movements shouldn't be so difficult that they can't be done every day. The first thing that we're going to do is on your hands and knees, and its purpose is to get people moving in their hips rather than their spine once more. Really often I see that living in the modern day inhibits our most powerful joint from moving as it should, and a lot of people just getting set up in this position don't even bend their hips at this 90-degree angle here. A lot of people do it by bending through their spine. And I think you know intuitively that our spine isn't really meant to bend in replacement of our hips. So this movement is just getting you to move through your hips once more. And that you should notice in the video that her spine resembles a subtle S shape, that there's a nice valley here in her lumbar spine, and a subtle hill in her upper spine. You might not be aware enough to know what shape your spine is making. I'll say it more than once in these video series. I really encourage you to video yourself and compare it to what you perceive is actually happening. Part of being a really good athlete is understanding where your body is in space. And what I see time and time again is that athletes believe their body is in a position that it's actually not. So I really encourage you to set up a video camera just as I have videoing her here and compare what you see with yourself to her or myself when we model these videos. Back to this exercise, what I want you to do is just rock your hips back towards your heels, maintaining this shape of your spine where there's Still a nice valley here, subtle changes in it, but still we see a neutral spine. The most often error is that as people descend, they bend through their back instead of in their hips. And so if this shows up when you're on your hands and knees and it's relatively light intensity, when you lower down to be in an athletic position or get ready to jump, you're probably going to be using your back as a hinging type joint rather than your extremely powerful hip. So we would want to see you self-correct and control your body throughout this movement. I'd want you to repeat this maybe 30 to 50 times. Be able to go really slow, be able to go a little bit faster, but the entire time you maintain the same position and awareness of your body. The variation of this is a quadruped side sit position where you will descend and come onto the outside of your heel, sitting your butt cheek on the ground, and then be able to own the movement on the way back up. That you don't have to jerk or throw your body around to come back to this resting position. That from the bottom, you feel that you have control of pushing into this knee to ascend back up. Her arms are pretty relaxed and barely weighted. They just stay in place. If you need to really exert a lot of effort to get up, that's okay. It just shows that you've got some room to grow with this movement. You'll do both sides, again, about 30 to 50 times. So in total, you might be doing about 150 of these, and it shouldn't take too long. One of the key distinctions to make is that no one's symmetrical, as perfectly symmetrical as I might like, or that you might like. And so maintain a little bit of curiosity or awareness of it. Is one side easier than another? The more difficult side I like to do as a 2-to-1 ratio. So if her left side's more difficult than her right, I'll have her descend twice on the left and only once on the right. As we add a little bit more variation, I'm okay with the spine changing shape just a little bit. But through a majority of the motion, she is moving through her hips and not through her back. Welcome to part 2 of your daily movement vitamins. This is also going to be very focused on your legs, hips, and spine. And it's going to be a deep squat. This is going to be a really challenging position for a lot of people. Very rarely does an athlete come to see me who can automatically own this position. What it looks like is this. Just a relaxed position at the bottom of a squat. A few details that I really like to see is that her feet are pointing forward or about 10 to 15 degrees to forward, so there's some subtle variations in this neutral. She's also relaxed. Her arms aren't reaching forward. She can rest evenly throughout her entire foot. Most of you won't be able to do this, so I'd recommend holding on to something in front, grab on, like a chair, a weight, or a door, table, something that's not going to be moving, because most of you will be falling backwards, like that. So come back up. Overall, I want you to accumulate 5 to 10 minutes of this position every day. And I want to be clear, I mean accumulate, not just spend a duration of 5 to 10 minutes straight. I want you to stay down here for 20 seconds, 30 seconds, reach a point where it's actually kind of difficult. And then once you need to get out of it, get out of it. Stand up, walk around, allow your joints to decompress from this very tightly folded position. As you'll learn with a lot of these videos, I don't just want you to be static and just staying here. I want to have some variability, and so do you. So you'll shift from side to side. Maybe notice that one ankle is harder to get into or another. Take your awareness down to your feet. Notice, is it even from front to back and side to side through the ball of your big toe or ball of your pinky toe? Try to make them balanced throughout. Almost every living thing on the planet that isn't hurt has an even weight distribution throughout whenever they contact the ground. A lot of you might have one knee in more than another and the pinky toes start coming up, or some of you will be much further out or back where the front inside is coming off the ground. So use your own judgment for how long you stay in this position.
Oh, I need a break.
Okay. My turn. So once you're here, then I want you to have some variability where you shift to one side and then you're able to actually drop one knee down to the other foot. A tendency that I see with this is that a lot of people will drop and keep their heel and foot almost parallel with the ground. That puts a lot of torsion on the knee that we don't really like. So ensure that your foot spins up or your heel spins upwards as you drop your knee, and just shift side to side. Notice how easily I'm able to do this. I'm not forcing my way through anything. The point of this is staying in a very relaxed position, and that if some of you can only go here, that's all you go for today. And you just see if you can inch a little bit further each time. Phase 2 of this movement is going to be straightening your legs somewhat or just elongating them. The hands will be placed on the ground. Hips will go skyward. The knees don't straighten or lock out. They stay slightly bent. And she's got weight still evenly throughout her whole foot. And then she'll descend. Go ahead and keep your hands flat on the ground. And she'll just go up and down and oscillate with a nice rhythm here. This I want you to do maybe 20 to 40 times in a row. You might start feeling a good amount of muscle burn in the quad or the shins or calves even, depending on who you are and how you've moved. And that's great. Go ahead and lean into that. I want it to feel like a soreness, maybe a burning, but absolutely no pain throughout this. Some keys to reiterate: whether you're dropping one knee, going into the bear position, which is here, the foot is balanced throughout the ground, that there's not too much weight in the heel, too much weight in the toes, or too much weight in one of the balls of the feet. Some of you won't be able to get this far because your ankles are too stiff to get you there. This doesn't mean you need to stretch them profusely. It just means that you need to work the opposite muscles that help bend your ankles. So for you folk, I'm okay with you having your heels lifted. Go ahead and turn to the side. And so what you'll see here is if you're one of these individuals, your heel will be up, and I just want you to drop one heel as the other one stays up. So there'll be a slight turn, and then the other one will drop as the other stays up. So you got some nice little oscillation between side to side, and it's a little bit more of an easier access point to get into your ankle and really train the muscles that create more ankle mobility for you. Welcome to one of my favorite movement vitamins and one of the simplest ones you can do. It's just hanging from a bar. I want you to accumulate about 5 to 10 minutes of this per day. I find that this is one of the most simple and effective ways to enhance the shoulder's power as well as its injury preventative qualities. Our shoulder, I think, is designed to hang, climb, and swing, and I've found extremely good results just from hanging regularly, especially if you're a student athlete and spending a ton of time in a chair. I've got one installed in my doorway at home, and in between bouts at the computer, every time I walk through that door frame, I just hang for 30 seconds or a minute. And by the end of the day, I've easily accumulated about 5 to 10 minutes. Use your own common sense when you've done too much or too little. Your body should signal to you if it starts to be uncomfortable or painful. So pretty straightforward. Just hang. This is the most basic version, and this is what I want you to start with. Eventually, you can start exploring what else you can do while hanging from the bar. The simplest thing would just be going side to side. Start twisting the hips, And what I do and what she's doing is really just relaxing the whole body and letting the connective tissue and muscles suspend us while we let gravity stretch out and kind of elongate our spine and our shoulders. Feel free to change your grip as usual. Notice what it does to the shoulder. Just be aware of how it changes things throughout your body. And then when you feel like you've had enough, you relax, do something else for a little bit, rest, and then jump back up on the bar and keep progressing towards those 5 to 10 minutes. Welcome to one of the shoulder progressions for your daily movement vitamins. To make things simple, I just call this shoulder rolling. And I really like this for helping the rotator cuff get strong and getting the ball to get really deep into the socket of the shoulder, as well as further integrate the shoulder blade onto the rib cage. So what it's going to look like is you'll just lie on your side like so. Almost all of you will start with your rib cage on the ground, and I want you to have it off the ground. So the only things really touching the ground are the bottom hip and that bottom shoulder. And then you're just going to roll your body forward until you feel like almost all your weight's on your elbow. Then you're going to tilt upwards onto your elbow, and then from there up to your hand. And then you're going to reverse. I want you to go down just as slowly and controlled as you went up. A lot of times when people struggle with this, they want to throw their momentum forward or upwards to help themselves finish the exercise. And for us, the goal isn't actually getting to the end, it's getting there each step of the way really well, and that the journey is more important than the destination. So what that would look like if someone were to cheat the rep or throw their momentum around would be make it look even worse. Yes, where there's just a big kind of voluntary throw of the torso to get the body up. And we want there to be control the whole time, that you control every millimeter of this movement. One small variation that you can make is, come on down, is just slightly vary the elbow position from, say, 90 degrees straight out to, say, 80 or even 100 degrees, so that we get a little bit variability in the shoulder as you roll and come on up. There will be some areas that are easier, some that are harder, and that's for you to find out. Welcome to phase 1 of the leg series of the Pillars of Performance. We're going to start with actually a core exercise. I mean that very loosely. There's not really any exercises that aren't core movements or whole body movements. Some just focus more on one areas than the other. And why it's really important for your core to stabilize your spine and really your entire body really well is that if your legs are springs and they're designed to push into the ground to create force, you know just as well as I do, if your legs push into a gym floor or the sand, the gym floor pushes back harder, so you jump higher. It meets your force with more stiffness. When you push your legs into the sand gives way, so some of that force leaks and you don't jump as high. That's talking about this end of the spring. On this end of the spring is your core. And if that's not stabilizing your spine and your center of mass very well, it doesn't matter how strong your legs are if what they're pushing into is like jello. So this is designed to get your core to start contracting as it should, to meet the demands of your legs so that you can jump as high as you want for as long as you want. What you're going to start with is just take a scan of how your body lies on the ground, in particular your spine. Most of you are going to feel a lot of weight right at your tailbone and then in your upper middle back. What I want you to do is that you'll lift your legs up, and then I want your breath and your keep your hands there. your stomach to meet your hands and push into the ground. So it inflates like a balloon. And now when you put your awareness on your spine, it's even through it, or more even throughout your entire lumbar spine. Nothing should change between her hips and her shoulders and her head even for her heels to tap on the ground. And so you see, it's almost robotic. And in this case, we want that her hips are mobile and relaxed and moving effortlessly, while the effort to stabilize her is at her spine. If you use your imagination, this is just a squat put on her side, or a really deep preparation to jump. So that's how we're starting to train some of your jump technique and jump height and power, is from a position to bias your core. With reps and sets, as you heard in one of my guideline videos, there's no magic number. For some of you, 10 is going to be plenty. For others, 20 might be where that magic number lies, where you start feeling, oh, okay, I've lost contact with the ground. My quality of movement has decreased. Therefore, you should stop. Perfect. Welcome to part 2 of your leg series. This one's going to look familiar to a lot of your daily exercises with your deep squat. This is just going to be a little bit more intense. We're going to take some of those daily skills into single leg type exercises. So go back into your deep squat. And what I want her to do first is be able to shift her weight to one side, and then be able to slide one leg out of the way. Use your hands for balance if you need. You can relax that leg on the ground, but she should be able to have her weight still on top of her foot. Go ahead and come back and switch legs. This is going to be challenging, and that's kind of the point. She's done the work to be able to do this and own this position. You're still getting there. What she did and what I've done to progress to this level of proficiency is use your arms to hold on to something, hold on to a weight, again, something sturdy, something that just keeps your balance forward. Okay, next, so part 2 of this deep squat series is going to be going back to that single leg. And this time bring the leg behind you. So she could rest here comfortably, but the point is she's going to stand up like our bear to squat series. Not all the way up.
Oh.
Down.
Oh, sorry, bear to squat.
Yeah, let's redo that. That's right. So.
I thought that was, heel raise is the same thing but with your heel raise. Okay, so it's like this?
Yeah, you can just let this leg relax.
Okay. Sorry.
It's all right. We'll just cut this in.
Okay. Do you want to start over about the single?
No, just from here. So part 2 of this deep squat series is going to be like our bear to squat, except that we're going to do one leg. So she'll be comfortable here, one leg tucked underneath like in a deep squat. And then this grounded leg is going to relax. This leg's going to do all the work as her hips go towards the ceiling, hands stay down. And then repeat. If you do this 20 to 30 times, maybe even 10 times, you're going to start feeling the work that you need to feel in your leg, maybe your calf, maybe your quad. There's no right place to feel it. You're going to feel it where it's unique to you, which is what needs to work the most. A lot of athletes will say, God, I feel this in my calf a lot. Or some will say, man, this is a lot of glute work. That's perfect for them. For me, I care about where her skeleton is positioned and where yours is, that her bones are evenly distributed through the ground, her knee is staying forward and in place, her hips ascend. After you've done about 3 to 5 rounds of this, you're going to enter part 3. Part 3 is going to be taking away some of your foot from the ground. So her heel lifts, and then she goes up the exact same way. And if you turn so they can see your side, And go to switch your feet. You'll see that her kneecap is pointing almost straight out towards the wall here as she just ascends. She's staying greatly balanced. And a point that I don't want you to miss is that all of her weight goes through the ball of her big toe. It's actually a big bone in our foot. It's designed to take about 85% of our weight when we move. So take your awareness, control your foot to put weight through the ball of your big toe as you go up and down. Welcome to part 3 of your leg day series. This is I call low diagonal sitting. It's like a sitting on your hip but propped up on your elbow. Almost always everybody gets into this position and they slump in the middle. So they kind of look like a bowl or the letter U. We want our spine to be sturdy and straight in this position. So again, if you video yourself or you're looking in the mirror or you're having somebody to help you, your spine should be straight, diagonal like this. What I want you to start with is just rotate your pelvis forward and back. What you should feel is that when it's back, all the weight is on your hip, and as it rolls forward, the weight travels down the thigh and then into the knee. Once you feel it at the knee and your hip has hit its end range, you'll stop, and then you'll come back. One of the most common errors of this is that people don't know how to move their pelvis. And so what they do, they move what they know how to do, which is their head and their shoulders. So most commonly, people will just reach their shoulder forward and come back and then look at me and be like, I did it, right? No, they didn't. And so if you need help with finding awareness of your hip, your hand is a great tool. So hand goes on hip, hand pulls the hip towards your knee, and then it comes back. Your awareness and hers is noticing that everything is moving in unison in her torso. I would say even if you own this movement, still do it about 20 times to get a nice rhythm, get a nice warm up for what we're about to do on both sides. And again, pay attention to asymmetries. If one side is harder than another, spend a little bit more time there. What this is for is to start lifting up and start really training our hip to load for lateral forces. Again, if you use your imagination, this is going to be somewhat of a squat on her side. This is going to show up when you need to change direction or make a running block or go after a dig or make some sort of athletic maneuver that isn't just straight up and down. So you and her will roll the hips forward, weight goes down to the knee. Once the knee is into the ground, the hips slowly lift up as she steps this leg forward, and then she descends back down into the hip. So you'll notice it starts out with a rotation, a lift, and a forward motion. Her head is going towards that wall, and then she just reverses it, meaning her hips go that way as she unscrews her pelvis. Well, this does look simple, and she's making it look easy. Almost all of you will find this to be quite challenging at first, which is why I really like it for you. You've got a lot to gain with this, and it's a big challenge at first. Eventually, it will be easy, and that's when we'll progress to the next phase. Welcome to part 4. I call this half kneeling squat. This is going to be very similar to your daily quadruped rock back or side sit, except that you're going to have a lot more weight onto your knee. The goal is similar. This pelvis, part of the hip, needs to meet the ground beside the heel. So she will slowly descend, keeping weight on the knee, nice and balanced. And again, notice how much control she has here, and she should have just that same amount of slow, amazing control as she ascends. There are a few variations of this. The only other one that I want you to have is that you sit straight back onto the heel. You'll notice that this is going to require different properties of your thigh and your hip, which is exactly what we want. There's a lot of muscles there that all need different movements to be trained as they're designed. And go ahead and spin 90 degrees. So what you'll see now is that as she descends, most of the motion happens in her hip, just a little bit in her spine once she gets down to a certain position, but still pretty straight and neutral. The spine will change a little bit more if she goes to the outside of her hip, or outside of her heel, excuse me. And see that rounding? About that much is normal. That's okay. If it's excessive, then we know this is a movement that you really need to train a bit more. Go ahead and show them one more. If you need help with this, use your hands on the ground, grab onto something, let your arms help you a little bit. But anything that you grab onto, I want you to see how lightly can you grab onto it and how much work can you make it for this leg. And what I'll echo once more is that if you feel some sort of asymmetry from side to side, spend a bit more time on the harder leg. All right, last one. This is half kneeling to standing. It's a very simple setup. Everything's around 90 degrees, knees bent at 90 degrees, ankle 90, hip 90, back knee at 90. What you can't see in this angle, but I'll describe to you, is that her pelvis is centered between this foot and that knee, so that she's actually resting on the inside of that kneecap. I'm going to adjust you just a little bit, so that there's kind of even weight from this foot to that knee. Now what I want her to do is she's going to work on lifting this knee only a few inches from the ground. Fantastic. And then one other variation of this is actually loading this leg more by reaching and leaning forward more. Notice how well she's maintained this spine. Notice that she's pushing evenly through that front foot. And most of all, she owns every millimeter of this movement. There's no jerkiness. There's no needing to throw weight around. This leg is being used maybe 30 to 40%, but a majority of it is from the front. Welcome to the second leg workout of phase 1. If you didn't notice, the first leg workout was mainly squat patterns. This one will be hip hinging patterns. And what that is, we'll get into in the next video. But just like the first one, we're going to start off this with a core exercise that I really like, that I find primes the spine to help support your mass while we start moving dynamically in the hips. I kind of just call it an army crawl, but that's how it looks. But there's going to be some nuanced setups and specifics of how you should move best here. So first you'll lie on the ground. Go ahead and go sideways at first. And you're just going to be propped up on your elbows here. The elbows are slightly wider than the shoulders. She's resting on the inside of her elbow, almost like she was on her funny bone. Her hands are open and right in front of her shoulders and somewhat come in like this. She's going to bring one leg up and out to the side. And then she's going to lift her spine off the ground a little bit higher. Okay. And then she's just going to crawl forwards. Notice her opposite arm and leg reach together in unison as then she comes back and again forward. This shoulder ends up almost on top of the hand as her spine twists and turns here. This is going to be really hard, especially for a lot of you. She's well versed in this and this is still difficult. So go ahead and relax. For you, it might be 3 to 5 that you do well. Some of you, as you progress, might get up to 10 or 12 in a row before you need a break. Again, the limiting factor for us with when to take a break in a set is when the movement starts deteriorating, when the spine is not moving how we want it to move. If she goes and faces you, you'll see a little bit more of those nuanced things. So again, spine on the ground, elbows are wide, go ahead and lift up. And then she'll lift and reach forward, and you'll see the leg crawls forward with the other hand that reaches in unison. Her spine doesn't teeter too much side to side. It stays on kind of a central railroad track or monorail as she goes forward and backwards. One more. Notice that this shoulder finishes almost on top of that hand as she gets forward, and that's the end point. Welcome to the second exercise of your second leg day workout. This is an exercise I like to call pelvis rotation over fixed femur. It's not very catchy, but it describes what we're trying to do very specifically. So if you go into somewhat of a lunge stance, all of your weight should be on that front leg, where this is just a really loose kickstand so that you don't fall over. The knee is pointing forward, the foot is pointing forward. The knee is directly on top of the ankle here. It's not so far back where she then has a lot of weight on this leg and her knee is behind her foot. It's vertical on top of her ankle. And again, it's not so far forward that her knee is on top of her toes. The shin is vertical from my angle and from yours. Now, go ahead and put your hands on your hips. She's going to rotate her entire body, specifically her pelvis, around a leg that just does not move. Her focus is how still can this knee be, while her entire body rotates from her pelvis. This leg stays unweighted and is more of a balance point. One of the common errors is rotating to put a lot of weight on this leg, and then the knee comes in, and the shoulders will tilt that way. That's one common error. Another one will be as she or you rotates, the hips come out this way, and the knee comes in, and the shoulders have gone that way. So we didn't actually rotate in the hip socket. We moved everything else. And so you'll see the difference now with a good rep of that everything stays rotating over a straight and controlled leg. All right, number 3 of this second leg day workout is an exercise I call pelvis bicycle. A little more catchy than the last one and just as specific. So what that means is she's going to resume this lunge-like position, but this free hip is going to pretend to be the pedal on a bicycle, where it should rotate in a forward circle here, or maybe backwards. So she's got good pelvis control, so she doesn't need her hands on her hips. You might want one hand on this hip, and she's imagining that this pelvis, this hip, is rotating like it's riding a bicycle. If she turns to face the wall here, you can see that there's an undulation of her pelvis, where you'll see that she side bends a little bit in her spine in each time, as there's a spinal wave type of motion here, and then as she runs up, it side bends here again. The same principles of the previous exercise matter, where this knee is unmoving. It's very stable as she just rides the bike with her pelvis. To move with this much precision and control requires a lot of muscle activation. It requires a lot of things, not just in the hip, but in the core and the spine as well, which is why we've involved it in this first phase of leg workouts for you, because you're going to depend on this for later ones. Now we're getting to the meat and potatoes of this workout, the hip hinge. By now your hips should feel very warm, activated, ready, as we're going to start teaching you some new and better movement patterns. As I was saying earlier, the hip hinge is one of the unique patterns of our legs. The other workout is basically squatting, folding your ankle, knee, and hip simultaneously, where the hip hinge is going to be exactly as it sounds, a primary bending of the pelvis, where the knee stays vertical on top of the ankle, and the hips shift back slightly, and she ends up looking kind of like an upside down triangle, where this is the top of the triangle, and then her arms and her thighs complete that triangle on top of a very vertical and balanced shin and foot. Her weight is not too far back or too far forward, because then she would fall over. Come on up. Some of the really common errors that I see is, again, bending through the spine instead of the hip joint. So she's doing too good of a job there. But now her arms have reached down, but you can see that she's rounded her back like a turtle shell. This is still not that bad of a compensation. A lot of people that I see are much worse, that they look like this, and they're unaware of what they're really bending. They think they've bent their hips, but if they saw on video, which I hope you do of yourself, you'll see that the motion came at her spine. And if you're moving here and not your legs, you're not going to jump high. These muscles here, when they bend and lengthen and contract and shorten, they're not going to make you jump high. Come on up. Being able to use the leg muscles by bending the leg joints is what allows people to jump high and stay healthy. So one more time. The pelvis tilts. Once the pelvis stops tilting, that's as far as you go. Some of you might not be able to go this far, and that's fine. You'll gain that range as you gain the strength and earn that range. It's not meant to be gained by stretching, but through work.
Second compensation.
Right. The second way a lot of people do things poorly is, again, their pelvis stops, and then they keep reaching it down by creating a valley in their upper back and neck. And so, again, awareness is so key for you here. Most exercise videos are just move this thing from here to there. It's not about that. It's about how you move your body, how your brain controls all your muscles and your bones, and that has to be done with awareness. Awareness of internal sensations and where you are in space, as well as watching video, getting feedback from people who know how to watch the body. So really take time to video yourself and compare it to her moving in this video, and ask questions to other people. Hey, how does this look if you don't have video, and see if it compares. It's not rocket science to move well. You should have a sandbag by this point. Bought a 50-pound bag of sand from Home Depot, maybe something lighter, wrapped it in some duct tape. We've got a sandbag conveniently here around that same weight, and we're going to start adding some weight into these movements. So she will grab the sandbag, stand up, and she's going to lower down just as she was just practicing, unweighted, with her awareness on her spine and her hips. She goes as far as her pelvis moves. She doesn't try to get the weight to a certain point towards the ground or be on the knees. She just goes as far as her pelvis allows. Again, she's maintained this knee vertical on top of the ankle. Her weight is still balanced from front to back, and her spine has stayed neutral. She's going to keep going with this until her form starts to break down, when her muscles really start burning for her, because you need to master these fundamentals before we get on to some of the more complex movements later on. To the first exercise of your pulling workout for your upper body. This section might be my favorite workout of the whole thing because it's typically where people make the biggest amount of progress. And why that is so rarely do humans and athletes spend much time hanging from a bar or doing pull-ups or even any sort of climbing activities. And there's a huge amount of room for improvement based on how our shoulder and our upper body is designed once we start re-immersing our bodies to these overhead pulling type activities. So the first thing you're going to start with today is a scapular pull-up with both arms. You'll start with both palms facing forward and then just go straight up and down with your head. It's really simple, but it can be also really effective. One of the more problematic ways that people will do this is recruiting their biceps and their elbows by making it a pull-up more than just a scapular pull-up, where they start recruiting a lot more of their arm musculature rather than just the muscles that attach to their torso and shoulder blade. The other thing that I want you to be able to do with this is know that vary your grip up at any and all times. There's not one grip that's better than another, just some that are going to be easier and harder. And then once you've varied your grip up, you can also vary going side to side. That you will go up to one side of the shoulder and then up to another. So one is doing a majority of the pulling, and this is going to be an essential prerequisite for some single arm scapular pull-ups that you'll do in later phases. And this would probably be one of the third or fourth options for hanging variability or the grips. Next in this phase is going to be an eccentric pull-up. And I have some slight variations on the traditional pull-ups that I think are going to be really useful for you. The main rule with this, however, should be I want you to control your body. I don't want you to start falling and flailing and going beyond a point of failure. So if some people can only lower themselves down a few inches, then that's where you are. Some others might be able to go all the way down several times, and then it proves to be equally beneficial to you wherever you are. So again, we're going to vary our grip and we're going to vary our body position throughout this. And then come on down. Good. And she has got a box here that she will stand up to get to the top at every rep, maybe even jump to the top of the pull-up bar. I would like knees to be at hip height or higher. Come on down. And relax. Part of the reason why I like the knees really high is that sometimes when people try to do pull-ups, they start to put their spine in funky positions to recruit a better position for the shoulder. I don't want to lose a spine position, or I don't want to lose our foundation just to accommodate the shoulder. I'd rather the shoulder evolve and get stronger with a better positioned core, which is why I want you to gauge whether or not you go all the way down or just a portion of it. So then show another grip. Knees up. And slowly under control, she descends. How to know if you're going beyond the point of failure is if you can't control your descent and you just fall like an elevator with its cords cut and then collapse. Yeah, that's too much, and that's when you decide to stop and rest. Now go ahead and show us what it would be like to go off center. So now she's going to shift her spine towards one arm and slowly control that. This is going to prepare us again for later phases. Some of you might not be able to descend all the way, shifting to one side, and so you'll just descend part of the way. I really like how far she goes so that her elbow is in line with her sternum. That would probably be the end range where you would go. One more. And yeah, change the grip. Neutral. This would be one of the last variations. If you don't have a high enough stool or chair so that you can stand up to the pull-up bar, go ahead and jump up to it as long as it is securely attached. You're volleyball players after all, so you get a few extra jumping reps. Welcome to one of your upper body workouts. This one is going to be focusing on all sorts of pushing motions. This first one is my variation on a tricep push-up. And the tricep is an underutilized and underappreciated muscle for actually stabilizing the shoulder. The elbow, the way it works is it allows the tricep to pull the shoulder deeper into the socket where it's a more stable position to hit harder from. Shoulder integrity is part of the reasons why people can hit really hard. So we have to train it in the right way so that your shoulder is maximizing its potential of all the muscles that play a role in it. The tricep doesn't just straighten the elbow, it also plays a role in the shoulder. So these first three motions in this workout are targeting that role of the tricep. So in this tricep push-up, she has her elbows propped up on her elbows, hands in front, as you can see. And she's going to try to lift her entire body simultaneously just by using her hands. Perfect. This is really hard. So you'll probably be able to eke out a few of these, maybe. Notice that her spine didn't arch or sway, or she didn't come up in multiple sequences. So what that would look like is that if she pushes it up with her hands and then her hips stay on the ground and then her knees come up, that's not what we want. We want the hands to be connected straight down to the feet and the entire body to lift up at once. If you can't do that, then you're going to just lift to your knees, where it's a much easier and more tolerable amount of force to lift. Few notes here. She's pushing through evenly of her entire palm, not just the outside of her pinky, but through the base of her thumb as well as the base of her pinky. The hands are very much like the foot in that when they're on the ground, we want to push throughout the entire thing. But modern culture and sport specialization oftentimes sends us down a more path of imbalance where we push through one side of the foot or one side of the hand in this case. So this next one I call a push-up plank. And as you can probably guess right now that I do things a little bit differently, and just because it has the word push-up in the title doesn't mean it's like normal push-ups. This is targeting an integrated shoulder, and we're going to specifically target the tricep again. So if she comes up to hands and knees, she's going to descend halfway down to a push-up. I want her to stop when her elbows reach 90 degrees. Hold. And so I'm stopping her here. Let your shoulder blades come together. Most people will have these wrinkles between their shoulder blades, which is disintegrating the shoulder blade from the rib cage. Come on up. When our shoulder blades come together there or pinch, they start coming off of the rib cage, start disconnecting muscularly from the rest of our body, which you might imagine is not good to hit a volleyball very hard. So what we want is that her shoulders stay here, her shirt and her shoulders stay just this smooth, that her shoulder blades stay broad as she descends. It is crucial that you learn how to control your shoulder blades by watching yourself on video. The shoulder blades in the brain are somewhat in a Bermuda Triangle of awareness, where people have a lot of unawareness of their shoulder blades. So video feedback is crucial here. As she descends, she's focusing on keeping her shoulder blades broad here. The shirt does not wrinkle, and then she's going to hold here for as long as she can without her shoulder blades starting to eke back towards her spine. She's approximately at 90 degrees of the elbow, which is what the goal is, no further, but I'd rather you stop higher than go too far. Come on up. So hold for about as long as you can and repeat that maybe 3 to 7 times. Again, use your own discretion and your own awareness and your own feedback using video of what you're capable of. Welcome to part 3 of this arm day. I call this the bent arm bear position. Bear position is when you're on your hands and feet like this. Bent arms mean elbows stay bent. Notice that she lost some of that shoulder blade position, and we want that shirt to stay nice and stretched out and broad without any wrinkles. The elbows could bend a little bit more. And all she's going to do here is try to keep her spine in this exact same position as she unweights opposite arm and leg. And then switch. The tendency is to straighten the elbow, but we want it to stay bent as she unweights. This is going to be hard, and that's the point. You're going to lose some balance. You're going to want to straighten the elbow, but it takes a vigilant amount of awareness to keep it bent as you unweight side to side. Once you've gone through 3 to 5 sets of that, maybe 10 unweights or so each, again, using your own discretion to choose the reps and sets for yourself, get to that challenge point. She's going to start crawling, just 1 step forward, 1 step backwards, maintaining a bent elbow. And then keep that one bent as you crawl. Yep, and then go forward. So notice it stays with this slight bend, more being a little bit better than locking out and straighten. All right, so now we are at the Mace series of our arm workout. And what a mace basically is a word for a medieval weapon with a really long stick and a weight at one end. And it's something that I have manufactured here at my gym, but it's something really easy to create with a few scraps of wood and a small bag of rocks. This could be a bucket of rocks, a bucket of sand, put some books in here, a purse, whatever you want. If you've taken some physics classes, you'll understand that this becomes a very long lever arm. So I just have a 5-pound weight in here, and that I have 2 screws just screwed into this piece of wood to keep the bag in place. And once it's on, now, if I hold the weight right here, if I hold this, I'm pretty much only holding the 5 pounds and that's it. Once I go further and further away, it gets heavier and heavier. This might be 7 to 10 pounds, and then we start getting towards 15 to 20 to maybe even 30 or 50 pounds if you go really far away. So this is a very easy tool to start applying unique and scalable forces with your workouts at home. And so we're going to go through 3 different variations of how this can be used. Use your own exploration of where you need to hold this to sustain your movement patterns and what we want to see out of it. Some of you might be very close to the weight. Some of you might be all the way down here. You can change the weight up to you as well. You can make some days much heavier and some days a lot lighter. So first, we're going to start pressing this from your back. Let's go this way. So I like to imagine that she's lying on a clock here, and she's going to just drop the weight down evenly towards a 9 or 3 o'clock, depending on your orientation. And then she's going to maybe go up to, say, a 10 o'clock, and then an 8 o'clock over here. She might notice that this grip is quite easy, so she'll narrow her hands. One of the reasons that I really like this is it's a simultaneous push and pull. Once you get the hang of it, I want you to take your legs away from the equation, so just your spine, the back of your hips, and the back of your shoulders support you on the ground as you press this implement in different ways. Definitely go to both sides. We're just showing this one this way for the frame of reference. Next is going to be a shoulder press, a seated shoulder press. So if you sit up, she's going to hold it at her chosen position, and she's going to press up. She's not going to hit me in the face. And back down. Varying the grip, varying where the rocks or the weight goes is an excellent choice. Explore what feels good, what's challenging, what's possible. Change the grip, change the side, really explore. The whole point is that you're controlling in this uneven implement as you go up and down. And for the third Mace exercise, you're going to go back onto your back. Again, we're going to imagine that she's lying on a clock, or that you are. And right now it's about at 12 o'clock. I want her to go from 12 and up to 11 and up, reaching really far back overhead, or almost as far as you can. As she goes more to the side, it's normal and okay for the legs to start counter-rotating to keep a balance. And we start incorporating some really nice twisting in the spine as you have to stabilize through the arms. And if she comes over to this side of the clock, a creative way to switch the arms, wonderful. Notice that her spine is staying somewhat flat on the ground. Her ribs aren't flaring. Everything's moving in unison and connected throughout the whole torso to move the bag of rocks. All right. Welcome to the first video for your Power Series day. When I watch a lot of volleyball players, especially the young ones, they just look really sloppy. They don't have a functional stiffness through their legs. And I think you'll recognize this. You'll watch a practice and you'll see those players that just seem to not have that spring that the other players do. When you watch some of the national team players or even some NBA players, it just seems like they bounce off the ground extremely quickly. Well, that's trainable. And that's what this series is about, is giving you that functional stiffness. And in this video, which I call an ankle dribble, it's about pre-activating your leg for impact with the ground. The best sprinters and jumpers in the world, as well as some of the best athletic animals like cheetahs and horses and greyhounds, they pre-activate their legs in the air before they hit the ground by keeping their ankles relatively bent to load their muscles to shoot like a gun into the ground. Because this is somewhat novel, we're going to go through a specific progression to get to the ankle dribble. And what I want you to think about for this is that your ankle is going to be bent almost all the time. And we're going to do that through a squat walk. So she's going to keep her ankle bent almost the entire time and try to go heel to toe while in a slight squat. The sensation that you'll find in your foot here is what's going to be carried over. As she comes back, she'll be a little taller and a little bit faster, but the sensation of going from heel to toe in her foot is what's maintained. Notice that she's not going heel to toe with her foot out in front of her. It's right underneath her center of mass. And when we do that, it allows for a very efficient spring. Your bone in your heel is gigantic. It's designed for a lot of force. And when we're not moving extremely fast, this is what's more appropriate to contact with the heel of the ground, heel into the ground. Then she's going to start going faster, where she's just trying to get her foot on and off the ground really quickly, impacting with that heel first. You'll see in a slow-mo snippet of what that really looks like. One of the common mistakes is to go toe first. It's almost like a prance at that point. While she's still moving fast, it's actually going to be a lot more time on the ground. And the more time we spend on the ground, the less power output we will have, and the less height we will gain when we jump. There's an even medium, a Goldilocks, so to speak, of the right amount of time on the ground for how much power you can generate. We can go too fast and too slow on the ground. This is about trying to find that happy medium and start developing a functional stiffness in the legs. So the next video in this power and stiffness series is called switching drill. Go ahead and demo. As you can see, it's trying to almost switch the legs in place as fast as she can so that the torso almost levitates. Just like the ankle dribble video, we want to pre-activate the leg for contact with the ground in a stiff manner, which means the ankle is bent, pulling the toes upwards, and initiating contact with the heel slightly, or the whole foot. Go ahead and show again. And pause. Notice that every time she pulls the leg up, it's bending at all three joints, especially this ankle. Bending this ankle upwards is how she prepares for stiffness into the ground. The common error here is a lot of people will do this, which then results in them going toe first into the ground, spending a lot of time on the ground, and not allowing their entire leg to work like a stiff spring. Instead, a lot of the work just goes down to their foot and calf. And a lot of people don't have the power or stiffness in their foot to afford that kind of movement. One of the common errors with this is a very bouncy switching drill. And what you can see is as she initiates that first movement, she kind of jumps off the ground rather than just a rapid replacement of the legs. Use video feedback for this. You've got an iPhone or some sort of smartphone, most likely, if you've got this course. Video yourself in slow motion, because a lot of your own perceptions of your body, as you've learned, are not representations of what's actually happening. Now it's time to start progressing these stiffness protocols into our jump series. And how we're going to progress you to big explosive jumps is with some very small but very quick hops. As you might guess, we are going to prioritize the ankle position and foot position when we start hopping. And that I'm going to keep that ankle locked as I try to get off the ground as quick as possible. I like to imagine that I'm on some hot and hard-packed sand, and when I hop, that the imaginary imprint has my heel deeper in the sand than my toes. And I keep that image as I go. I'm not trying to jump very high there. All I'm trying to do is get on and off the ground as quick as possible. And that is what determines my height. Later in the next phase, we will start jumping for height, but first it's about developing these foundational principles of leg stiffness, a functional stiffness, and a really good spring, again, caused by that pre-activation by pulling the toes up away from the ground. Now, we don't just jump on 2 legs with this, we will also jump on 1. You can get creative with this. You don't just have to go forward and backwards. I want to see, can you maintain that foot position as you go sideways on both legs, sideways on one foot? Can you go backwards or even to a diagonal? Again, I want you to master these foot principles before we start going for height, which is going to invite some compensatory patterns if we don't get these foundations down now. Enjoy and explore.